Hi, welcome to Create with Tech. If you've ever wondered how artificial intelligence can transform flat, two-dimensional images into fully realized 3D models, you're in the right place. Today, I'm doing a showdown between three open-source AI tools, TripoSR, Trellis, and Spar3D, to see which one comes out on top. Each of these tools claims to take your 2D images and turn them into 3D models ready for printing. But how well do they actually perform? To find out, I'll be putting them through their paces, printing the results, and comparing their output in terms of accuracy, detail, and printability. So stick around for this ultimate AI 2D to 3D showdown to see which tool delivers the most impressive results. And don't forget, everything I'm showcasing today is open source, so you can try it for yourself if your setup allows. All right, so here I am in front of TripoSR, and I'm going to do each one of the 2D to 3D AI models in the order in which I installed them on my computer. So I installed TripoSR first, then I installed Trellis, and then I installed Spar3D. So I'm just going to go through them in that order. Now, let me just say a couple of things about the images that work best with this. So I have a few images here. I'm only going to do 3 of them. The thing about the images that you need to find if you are going to install this yourself, and by the way, I do have a video where I show how to install TripoSR, and I had a few comments basically saying that the transformation from 2D to 3D didn't turn out very well, and it's always the images that are the problem if it doesn't turn out well. Now, there are some limitations, of course, in the AI itself, but typically, if the transformation from 2D to 3D doesn't work or doesn't look very good, it's because the images are not really suited for 2D to 3D transformation. So the first thing about the images that you should get is that they should be high resolution. You need to have as many pixels in the image as you can possibly get. So a higher number of pixels will generate a better 3D model. The other thing is that the image itself has to be 3D. There has to be lots of detail. So if you take a look at this image, for example, you can tell that there's a lot of detail in the image. So you want to maximize the amount of detail that you have in the image itself, and that will get you a better 3D model. So 2 things. First of all, as many pixels as you can get, so a high resolution image. And secondly, try to get a 3D image, or as much of a 3D image as you can. That will also get you a better 3D model. All right, so I've got a few images here. I'm going to do this funny robot. I'm going to use that. I'm also, I think, going to use this image here of Yoda. And I'm also going to use this image here of a knight. It could be either for a chess set or just a standalone knight. All right, so those are the 3 images that I'm going to use. Let's start with the funny robot. So I'm just going to drag it onto the TripoSR image panel or image screen, and I'm going to click on generate, and it should automatically transform it into a 3D model. So the first thing that it does is it takes out the background, and then it will transform it into a 3D model, and we'll see how it turns out. Now, it does take a bit of time with TripoSR. It's not a quick process, not a slow process, not a quick process, kind of in the middle. So it took about, 30 seconds. And you can see here that it doesn't look too bad. I mean, there's a fair amount of details. It's not a bad looking model. Is it great? I wouldn't say it's great, but it's actually not horrible either. It's kind of, in the middle. So let's download the OBJ file, and that'll be the first 3D model that we'll take a look at. The second model that I'm going to do is the Yoda model. So let's just get rid of the robot and bring in the Yoda, and we'll click generate, and we'll see how this one turns out. Okay, so here we go, and I think actually this one looks pretty good. There is a fair amount of detail, and I think that it's pretty much ready for 3D printing. I think it'll probably make a decent 3D print. Maybe not a great one, but definitely not a horrible one. So let's download this. And then finally, we're going to do the knight. So let's bring the knight here, and we'll generate a 3D model, and we'll take a look at how it turned out. Okay, so here we are, and you know what? This actually looks pretty good. Now, it is missing some of the details, definitely, but it's not bad. It's I would say, reasonably good, and it's definitely going to make a decent 3D print. I don't think that anyone is going to say, "Oh, this is a terrible 3D print of a model like this." So let's download it, and we will go on to the next 2D to 3D model, which is Trellis. All right, so next up is Trellis. Trellis is an open source tool from Microsoft, which creates high quality 3D models from images using a clever two-step process. So first, it builds a rough 3D skeleton of the object, called a sparse structure, capturing its basic shape. Then it refines this skeleton by adding detailed textures and geometry using information learned from a massive data set of 500,000 3D objects. So this approach ensures that the final model is both accurate and visually detailed. In the future, they're also going to have a text to 3D part for this AI. It isn't available yet, but it's coming soon. So let's see how well it does and how accurate the models are. The first thing I'm going to put in here then is the little robot, and we'll generate a 3D model by hitting the generate button. And it does take a minute to generate because it really depends on a lot of resources in the computer, on the GPU. So it's not that quick, although in this particular instance, it generated the model relatively quickly. And as you can see, it is very accurate. There is a lot of details in the model. We can extract a GLB file from this model, and then we can bring that into Blender, convert it to an STL, and send it off to a 3D printer. So let's just take a look at the GLB file. And as you can see here, it is looking really good. The mesh looks good. The texture looks really good. This is a really high quality 2D to 3D solution. So, okay, let's download this toy robot, and we'll go on to the next image. So the next image is the Yoda image. So we'll bring that in here, put it into the image prompt window, and we'll generate Yoda. And let's see if it turns out as good as our little robot. So in the background, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's sampling the image, and it's trying to create a 3D model from it. And it does take a bit of time. Again, it didn't take as long as I'd expected. And as you can see, the details on this Yoda are absolutely amazing. Let's extract the GLB file and see what that looks like. I'm really looking forward to 3D printing this, because I actually have not 3D printed anything yet from this particular 2D to 3D AI. So it's going to be interesting to see if the 3D print turns out as good as it looks here. Again, look at this. Look at this. Look at the details on this, and the texture is fabulous. And also the mesh, I think, is going to look really good. You can tell that the mesh here in this window is very accurate and detailed. So wow, this is really incredible. All right, let's download this GLB file, and we'll go to our final image, which is the chess piece, or the knight that can be used as a chess piece. So we'll generate that. And if it's the same as the other two, I think it'll be very impressive. And yes, look at that. Again, you know, I'm really amazed, because I thought it would take longer, but it's actually generating these models fairly quickly. All right, so let's extract the GLB file and see what it looks like. So it does take a bit of time, but you know, given the quality that we're getting out of this, it is very impressive. So here's the GLB file, and again, it looks very detailed, very accurate. I think it would make a fantastic 3D print. So let's download it, and we can go on to the next AI. So this is going to be Spar3D, and we'll see how it measures up compared to Trellis and TripoSR. So let's get on to the final 2D to 3D model. So the last model that we're going to look at is called Spar3D, and it's a tool from Stability AI that turns a single image into a detailed 3D model in apparently less than a second. And it uses a two-step process. So first of all, it creates a basic structure called a point cloud, which outlines the object's shape. Then it refines that with something called a triplane transformer, which adds details like textures, lighting, and even filling in the parts that you can't see in the image, like the back of the objects. And what's really handy about this particular tool is how quick and flexible it is. You can edit models almost in real time. You can adjust shapes, add features, change colors, and it updates supposedly almost instantly. And it's designed basically for game developers, product designers, or anyone working with 3D models. Plus, it's free to use, so it's easy to get started. Okay, so let's see how it compares to TripoSR and Trellis. And we're going to start by bringing in our trusty robot, and we'll drop it into the image window. And right now, with this particular model, you have to generate a transparent background. So it doesn't do it automatically. You have to go to the bottom and you have to remove the background, and it will create a transparent background. So it won't interfere with the generation of the 3D model. It'll remove all the extraneous stuff in the background, which is what we want. And once you've done that, it's as simple as hitting the run button, and it will generate a 3D model. Now, what's really great about this particular 2D to 3D AI model is that it is fast. It is lightning fast. And if you are cramped for time, you will find that this is not going to take a lot of time. And if we look at the actual output, it doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good. The mesh looks all right, and the textures look pretty good. And you can even modify the textures somewhat. You can go down here, and it gives you the option to change the map with some HDR settings, and you can make it look a little different if you want. So for example, if you want it to look like it would look like in a studio, a small studio, you can change the look of it, and it will apply, you know, various color changes and so on to make it look the way you want. So it's really good for game developers, people who are really concerned about the way the texture looks, and it does work, and the texture looks very nice, and even the mesh looks pretty good. At least in this window, it looks pretty good. But we'll see later on if it looks as good as it looks here. All right, so we're going to download this, and we're going to try the next model. All right, so the next model we're going to be working with is our trusty Yoda image. Let's bring that here, put it into the window, into the image window, and again we have to remove the background. We have to make the background transparent, so remove background, and it does that lightning fast. And then we run the AI, and it will very quickly create a mesh for us. And it looks pretty good. If we zoom in, you can see that it's not half bad. And here's the point cloud, and we can modify the point cloud if we want. I'm not going to do that here, but suffice it to say, what this particular model excels in is the fact that you can modify the 3D output and make it look exactly the way that you want it to look. And also, it is lightning fast, so if you are concerned about time, this is definitely the model that you want to work with. So let's download the mesh, and we'll go on to our final image, which is the night, and we'll bring that to the input window. And again, we have to remove the background, and we'll do that. It very quickly removes the background, and then we'll run the AI and create the output. And again, there's no doubt that this is a very quick process. You could see how quickly it created the model, and that is pretty amazing. And again, it doesn't look half bad. You can see here that it doesn't have the kind of details that the other 2D to 3D models created, but it's not bad. But of course, the proof is in the pudding. What I'm concerned about is how it looks 3D printed. And that's something that we will see at the very end of the video. But again, this is a pretty decent 2D to 3D model. And given that it's free, they're all free, and it's flexible in terms of the computer that it'll work on, it looks pretty good. So let's download it. And these are basically the three models that we're going to test. The next thing that I'm going to do is bring each of the models into Blender, and I'll put the meshes side by side so we can get a better look at how detailed the meshes are and how good they're going to be when we send them to the 3D printer. So let's do that now. So the last thing I'm going to do before 3D printing is a side-by-side comparison of the three models in Blender. And I'm going to start off with the robot. So let's open up Blender and we can take a look. And clearly we can see that the best mesh is the one in the middle. And that mesh, of course, comes from Trellis. It really is amazing how well it was able to interpret the image. And the mesh here looks absolutely fantastic. All the details are there, and they look very convincing and high resolution. In this particular case, I would say that TripoSR looks okay, but it's a bit messy. You definitely would have to clean up the mesh before 3D printing if you wanted to do a really good 3D print. I'm not going to clean up the mesh. I'm just going to print them as they are so we can get a side-by-side comparison. of what they look like 3D printed. And the mesh from Spar3D just looks a little bit underdefined, let's say. I think what Spar3D does is focus more on the textures and kind of ignores the mesh. So it puts a very high quality texture on a mesh that isn't quite as good. And that's too bad, because I think if they slowed down the process of creating the model, just slow it down, or at least gave the user the option to slow down the processing of the image into a 3D model, perhaps it could generate a much better 3D mesh. But it's not bad. It's just not as well defined as the one that was made by Trellis. So let's go on to the next image, which is the one of Yoda. And again, there's no doubt about it. The Trellis model in the middle wins. TripoSR is not horrible, but again, it has to be cleaned up. And Spar3D just looks like it's not as well defined as I'd like it to be. And that's too bad. I think that if the mesh was better defined, it would probably be a much better 3D print. But clearly the Trellis model looks absolutely amazing. It has all the details, and the mesh itself is really clean. It just looks very well defined, and everything just looks really good with it. All right, so the final thing, of course, is the knight. We're going to open that up, and we're going to see how it turned out. And no surprise again, Trellis wins by, quite a bit. The mesh from TripoSR, again, looks just a little bit messy. Definitely printable, I would say, but just a bit messy. It's better defined than the mesh from Spar3D, but it's not quite as good, obviously, as the mesh from Trellis. Trellis wins by miles. So the last thing that we're going to do is print them out. We're going to print all of the models out, and we're going to take a look and see how they turn out as a 3D printed object. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back and assess the final results. Alright, so here are the final 3D prints. And as expected, Trellis comes out on top. The level of detail it captures is seriously impressive. Its ability to infer what the model looks like from all angles, thanks to training on 500,000 3D models, really sets it apart. Both the texture and the mesh are outstanding. As for TripoSR and Spar3D, it's a closer call. TripoSR might have a messier output and require more cleanup, but it does deliver more detail overall. Meanwhile, Spar3D stands out for its speed and great textures, though that doesn't help much when it comes to 3D printing. All three models are 3D printable, of course, but Trellis is in a league of its own. So if you've got the resources, I'd highly recommend installing it. The results are absolutely worth it. All right, that's everything for today. As you've seen, Each of the three models for 2D to 3D generation has its strengths and trade-offs. If you're working with limited resources, TripoSR and Spar3D are great options. TripoSR may take longer and its models might need some cleanup or remeshing, but it runs entirely on your CPU. No high-end GPU required. It's a solid choice if you're focused on accessibility and don't mind some extra post-processing. Spar3D, on the other hand, is lightning fast. It's perfect for speeding up your workflow, but like TripoSR, the final mesh might need some polishing for high-quality 3D printing. It's also light on resources, which is a big plus. Then there's Trellis, the clear winner. Its output is exceptional, delivering 3D models you can print right out of the box. However, it requires a powerful GPU with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which not everyone has. If your system meets the specs, Trellis is definitely worth installing. It's free, and thanks to a one-click installer from Igor Arni, it's much easier to set up, even on Windows, though your mileage may vary. For installation help, check out my TripoSR install video or head to the Spar3D GitHub page for step-by-step instructions. I'll drop all the necessary links in the description below. And that's it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. It's free, it helps the channel, and it makes my day. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.